Hey, welcome to the Weekend Rewind. I love this guy, Sean D'Souza. Last time I saw him was actually in New Zealand last year. And I remember when I first heard him speak at a conference, and he had the most, back then, this is like in 2018, he was talking about just having a ceiling on your business and like not growing at all costs and just being content with a certain figure and more importantly, optimizing for your life. He has a podcast called The 3 Month Vacation. He's brilliant. His writing is fantastic. He's very thoughtful, and you'll hear all of that in today's episode. Enjoy this one with Sean D'Souza, and I'll speak to you tomorrow. His name is Sean D'Souza, and he runs a company called Psychotactics out of Auckland, New Zealand. Sean does many things. He's an author, cartoonist, copywriter, podcaster. I believe he's a pretty good cook, judging by the photos off his social media, as well as a very powerful teacher too. Anyway, Sean was speaking at the conference, and during it I was thinking, who is this guy? I was pretty much nodding and agreeing with everything he was saying. I really liked his philosophy around work and life. For the last 17 or so years, Sean and his wife, Renuka, have developed a life where they work for 9 months of the year and take 3 months off to travel around the world. That's pretty incredible, huh? He also believes you can market your business, product or service without doing a Facebook Live every day. He was an excellent presenter, engaging, thoughtful, and also had real substance. So I started listening to his podcast called The 3 Month Vacation, which, if you're in marketing or have your own business, I highly recommend. Welcome to the show from across the ditch, Sean D'Souza.
Hello.
Hi,
Liam.
Sean. Hi. Sean, I really want to get into it because I've given you a really fantastic introduction to who you are and what you do. But I want to talk about time, and a lot of these days when we run workshops in organisations or, even outside, we're really limited with the amount of time that we have. So in the 2 days, we try and cram as much information into our participants' heads as we can. But when I went to Singapore and went to your workshop, it was a 3-day workshop. And in that, you spent, I think it was the first 5 minutes of the workshop explaining that, hey, we can cover all this content in half a day. So I'd really like to hear your philosophy around embedding information in people's heads and guaranteeing a skill by using time a bit more differently to everyone else.
Yeah, so that's first of all, the reason why I say that at the start of a workshop is because of the objection that comes up. It's like we seem to be loitering around a lot. We have lots of breaks. But the point is, why do you go to a workshop? And it depends on why you go to a workshop. If you're with a corporate, you go there to waste time. Right? But if you're a small business, for instance, the chances are that you're looking for a skill. But even if you're in a corporate, there's a pretty good chance that you're looking for a skill. And what the person needs to do, the person conducting the workshop, is they need to understand that whatever they understand is not easily assimilated by the participant. And then once they assimilate it, they still have to practice it. And so there's lots of this breaking down that goes on. So the formula that I have is like 1/5 or 1/6 of the time needs to be spent by me, with slides and stuff like that. But the rest of the time is for them to work on the assignments that I give them and the group assignments and individual assignments, and breaking it down to the point where they walk away without notes and they know what to do. And that is very crucial, because if you need to go back and read a whole bunch of notes just to get something done, that's like having to drive a car and going, oh, where are my notes?
So on that, how do you confidently say then that you do guarantee this skill? And why do you think time, giving people the space to reflect and talk about it, why is that more effective than just saying that, than throwing that information at someone? Why is that sort of group engagement, giving them the space, so effective?
Because information is very tiring. So what we do is we look at 4 p.m. and you look at 4 p.m. on day 1, 4 p.m. on day 2, 4 p.m. on day 3. And you look at people's faces and they get very tired. And if at 4 p.m. they're all bubbly and stuff and they're not exhausted, that tells you that the volume of information is not too great. And that means that they're able to assimilate it just like you would on a normal day. You have tasks to do, and 4 p.m. doesn't necessarily tire you out. But when you're at a workshop, people just give you more and more information, thinking that that is the most important thing. But it's not. It's what you really want from the workshop is you go in there not to get more information. You could sit at home. You go there specifically to come back after 3 days. So if I go to, say, a Photoshop workshop, when I come back from that Photoshop workshop, I can have a 200-page book. I can have all of these slides. I can have the notes and videos and stuff. But can I do masking in Photoshop? That's the goal. So as a presenter, you have to go, wait, how am I going to design this stuff so that everyone, and this is without exception, everyone can do masking in Photoshop. And it might well be that masking involves 7 days. So in that case, you go, okay, we won't do everything in masking. We'll do something that we can manage in 5 days. And then maybe you can't do in 5 days. And then, so you have to almost break it down to the point where you go, okay, if we do A, B, and C, then in 3 days, it's guaranteed that everyone in the room will be able to do it.
I like how you talked about A, B, and C and chunking it down, because I've noticed something very similar in your podcast. You really talk about 3 things in every episode over the space of, say, 20 to 30 minutes. Is the number 3 something special to you, or am I just reading too much into that?
The first thing is, what I tend to do is I tend to say, okay, I'll tell you 3 things about why you need to make workshops really safe. And then I usually can think of one thing or the second thing, and then I have to force myself to put the third thing in. So from my perspective, it's good because it forces me to elaborate on a specific point. But from a client's point of view as well, it's not that hard to focus or to work on 3 things. You know, if I do A, B, and C, they can kind of remember that. I don't think there's any science to it. We seem to like 3 things, but at the moment you go to 4 and 5 and 6 things, it's much harder because you have to remember these are not things; these are concepts. So when I say, okay, safety in workshops, well, that's not a thing. It looks like a bullet point, but it's really, it could be a whole workshop in itself. And that's what, you know, facilitators and presenters don't understand, that one little bullet point that you just made, if you could just go deeper into that would be so much that would be useful to me rather than you jumping to point 2 and point 3 and point 4 and onwards.
Yeah. And you brought up a really good point about all those notes from a Photoshop workshop. You could take away a 200-page guide, but how often do we really go back to our desks and refer to it? I think, you know, a lot of us put it on the shelf and think, yeah, one day I'll read that, but 5 years later it's still gathering dust. So it's a very good point.
Yeah, because that should be the purpose of the workshop. This is the reason. So the purpose of a workshop is to get people out of their house, out of their office space, and, you know, give them time to travel, because the travel to the workshop gets you to think. The travel after the workshop gets you to think. So those are very crucial. But also in the workshop, because we give them so many breaks. So you say, well, people often ask me, well, how do you know that people aren't checking their email during the workshop? Well, if you have like 12 breaks or 6 breaks, and they have enough time to do all that stuff. So they're not going to do it in the workshop. In the workshop, they're participating. So this design of something is very crucial.
And I think if you're an external consultant going into a company, I think you really want to guarantee that output. But at the same time, if it may be difficult explaining to your client, hey, I do need to give these people frequent breaks, the client may be thinking, what the hell are you doing? You're not actually earning your hourly rate. So I guess it's important to convince that these kind of concepts are really important to guarantee that skill. You brought up the concept of creating a safe environment for your workshop. Is that something that you, I know you have Renuka in the corner there that helps you with preparing and setting all of that up. How do you create a safe space where people that aren't really confident in asking questions or speaking out, how do you ensure that you guarantee them the skill by creating a safe place where they do feel safe to raise issues and questions?
Yeah, so one of the things that people don't realize is that people don't care about your content. They don't care about your slides, and they don't care about anything. They only care. Yeah, okay. They don't until they feel safe. Yeah. So they're not going to do anything if they end up looking like a fool or they end up whatever, you have to think of them almost like 5-year-old kids. Like, the 5-year-old kid in the house is bouncing around, laughing and stuff. And then you take her out, and then she's wiggling between the father's toes, trying to stay away from your gaze because the father just said, sing a song. Come on, Emily, sing a song. No, not going to sing a song, right? But you give Emily enough space and enough time, and she will do that. So what we do is we set it up so that people are safe. Now, one of the things, I don't know, people have, multiple questions to this, and this becomes a whole workshop in itself. But essentially what we do is, for most workshops, not the one you did, but for most workshops, what we do is we create the notes and we send it to them a month in advance. And you say, well, if you're going to send them all the notes a month in advance, then why are you going to show up to the workshop? As in the presenter, what's the point? And the point is that I feel safe as a person reading the notes. Now there's no shock and awe. There's no, I have to come and I have to see all these slides for the first time and I have to assimilate all this stuff. No, you're there, you've read the notes, you understand it. So what's the job of the presenter? Well, the presenter has to show up there and now explain the same concept with different examples. So now you're getting a much deeper understanding of the same thing, different angles, same concept. So if I say safety and I send you a book with, several examples of how you create safety in workshops or how you create a safe zone, then when you come to the workshop, I show you different examples. How does it work in a corporate environment? How does it work, if you're having a course online and you can't see anybody? So now you're getting depth in it. Now that creates one level of safety. The second level of safety, and it depends on who's having the workshop. But what we do is we get people to show up before the workshop, as in the day before. Now in Singapore, the workshop you attended, we landed just the night before. It doesn't usually happen, but we tend to have a meet and greet the previous night. In Brussels, we went to the Tintin Museum. So there was, I know you missed out.
I know. I got all the photos. Thanks for that while I was sitting in my cubicle.
So all of this stuff is done as a preparation. Then we have soft toys that people chuck around. We have sometimes when you come to the workshop, you'll get maybe a little postcard with your name written on it. These are all these little things that enable people to go, oh, this is a fun environment. This is not a place where I'm going to be put down and made a fool of. So, and this takes a long time. When you get to a psychotactics workshop, you don't realize it, but until about 11 o'clock, you're doing nothing. Yeah, absolutely nothing. You had a bunch of introductions, which are also engineered for you not to introduce yourself, but to introduce somebody else. You're doing a whole bunch of stuff until you finish the first coffee break, which is at 10:30. And then at 11 o'clock, that's when you're actually doing the first assignment.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I'm actually I was reflecting on our days in Singapore, and yeah, there is a bit of a science behind it. Good to hear.
Yeah. So this just goes on, through the days, and then as people, they get to know. Okay, they get to know. So we put people in groups, but of course we've had really bad examples in groups. So the point is, how do you make that safe as well? Which is, on day one we'll have a group, and it's random. It's not even like necessarily the same groups. And then sometimes if we find that we need to change the groups, the next day we change the groups. And what that does is now you say, well, that's uncomfortable, but it is safe at some level because you feel, okay, then I don't have to be with this person all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so there are lots of very small things, but essentially, if you stop thinking of it as an adult workshop and go, I've got a whole bunch of 10-year-olds. How do I keep them comfortable and happy? Then, lots of breaks, soft toys. Think of it as a 10-year-old's party, and I think you'll have a formula there.
It sounds really fun. Interesting point that you said that no one really cares about the presenter or the slides until you make them feel safe. It's the first time I've heard anyone say that. You talked about the levels of safety, so giving out the notes in advance. Again, that's another new concept I've never heard, and a lot of people would think, hang on, well, yeah, what is the point of me showing up here? And I think that challenges the facilitator to start figuring out more examples, or then putting more emphasis on how we're going to make this more relevant for the people in the room at the time, especially if they've read their notes prior. And then I like the idea of the meet and greet beforehand. It takes that mystery away of who's in the room, because like you said, when you're rocking up to a workshop, you could be pretty apprehensive of who's going to be in there, how I even get there, all these thoughts going through your head before you even see the first slide. Now, I want to talk about the way that you introduce topics as well. And you always start from a high level overview. So in Singapore, you spoke about the Manhattan skyline, and then you're really just teaching us the importance of foundations. So is that the way that you introduce concepts a lot of the time? Is it through using stories and looking at things that are going out in the world and then trying to make that relevant to the concept you're exploring?
Yeah, because that's what you remember. So information, again, is very tiring. And most of us think that that's what the clients want. The clients don't actually want that. If we know what clients really want in a workshop, and that is they want to leave the room. And you say, that's not possible. Well, do this. The next time you're having a workshop, tell them, look, all of you are here for the information, right? And they'll all say yes. And you go, okay, so we're going to do this workshop until 9 p.m. tonight. And then watch their faces. They're all, yeah, it's the same thing as school, right? So, if you tell a bunch of 10-year-olds, hey, school ends at 4 o'clock every day, but if we do all our stuff really well, we can all go at 3 o'clock. And they go,
yay.
Okay, yes. And if you take 30-year-olds in a room or 50-year-olds in the room and you do that, it's exactly the same. So I've gone away from your question, but the point is that people are looking for the exit sign. And so if you design your workshop around an exit sign, which is how can I get people moving all the time, then that's the way they learn, because they don't really learn sitting down there while you're droning on forever. That's not when they're learning. That's when they're just hearing, not even listening to you. That's when they're checking their email. But once you've given them stuff to do, once they're starting to move, once they're starting to discuss stuff, once they're going to the cafe and back, and you know how many trips we did to the cafe and back? I mean, we pretty much spent an hour and a half just going back and forth.
And I don't think anyone was looking at their watch thinking we need to get back. We're enjoying all of our time away as well. I think we were talking about what we were learning as part of that, drinking great coffee.
Yeah, but in that section, that's where you're doing all your learning, where you're doing all your assimilating. And to your question was the concepts. So if you give people like a whole bunch of bullet points, it's very hard to remember. But if I tell you a story, like for instance, we have this book called The Brain Audit, and in that I talk about how you land at an airport and you have 7 red bags and stuff. And then if I meet that person 6 years later and they go, hey, I still remember that story. So finding that story at the top of your presentation and then in the different sections of your presentation, that makes a big difference, because I can remember the stories. And after that, like for instance, you did the sales page workshop, and now you know that to build the sales page, you don't start. See, tell me, I'm putting you on the spot now. How do you build a sales page?
Well, we started by writing all the bullet points.
Yeah, but where do you start? From the headline?
No.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
So
the benefits and features, and your bullet points and. Yeah.
So what you're saying is you're starting at the bottom, and that's where the Manhattan example comes in. You build a building, a skyscraper from the bottom up, not from the top down. So the concept stays in your head, and then you don't have to refer. You don't even have notes until now, but if I gave you that assignment to do, you could do it.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
It needs to be something that you can fit on the back of a postcard. If you can't do that, then you've said too much.
And I'll have to upload an image of the postcard to the show notes for this episode because they're beautiful. So Sean hand drew these the postcards which had all the important points and the process for writing a sales page. And I could look at that right now and write a sales page just from looking at the artwork on that. So
And this is the interesting part that, anyone listening to this will go, okay, I got the whole workshop. I don't have to go to the workshop. And see, that's the beauty of it, that all of
Yeah.
those 3 days are encapsulated in that postcard. And in your head, you can expand all of it.
Yeah.
But the person looking at it has no idea. I mean, they have some idea, but they don't have the same idea that you have.
Yeah, like the real
of the
substance and the experience. Yeah, that's right.
And,
Yeah.
and it's important to note that you still don't have notes or slides or anything, and you can still do it. That's important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is important. So you put your Da Vinci course out for sale. So what that is Sean and his team can teach anyone how to cartoon, which is just a skill that everyone thinks that they can't do. Everyone I know says, oh, I can't draw. So cartooning is a bit of a stretch. You teach this or system it, create a structure so you can teach people around the world that are online, not even in the same room or in the same time zone. How do you teach a skill like cartooning to an audience that's all around the world?
Okay, so one of the things that you went through and most people go through is what we call a layering system. So a layer consists of A, then AB, then AB and C, then AB and C and D. So every time you're always still doing A, and then you're always adding B, and then you're always adding. So what most training does is they go A, B, C, D, E, F, and then you're like, that's overload. But if you do A, B, A, C, A, D, A, B, C, D, sorry, then every time you're going back to the original. You're going back and practicing that, and you're getting better at A, getting better at A, getting better at A. So you keep, and that's what we call tiny increments. So we increase it, but all the time you're repeating it, and I'm repeating myself here. But yeah, so that is one of the things that we do. The second thing that is even more crucial is this whole factor of getting people in the safe zone. So almost everyone who joins a course, like we teach different skills like writing or presentations or whatever. And cartooning is so from left field because people say, I could never do that. So the first point is to get them to the point where they're not making fools of themselves, because everyone who draws like a 6-year-old stopped drawing when they were 6 years old, which is why they draw like 6-year-olds. But having now been, and now they're 35 or 55 or 75, it doesn't mean that they have to do, 69 years more of drawing to get to a 75-year-old. Because a very fluent artist is like a very fluent speaker of a language. It takes about 6 to 9 months to get very fluent in any language. And what we do is, instead of going, okay, you have to practice every day, you have to, we just build this in tiny increments, and then that builds a huge amount of confidence. In fact, the first assignment for the cartooning course is to draw circles, just random circle, what we call circly circles. So it's just, it's like a 2-year-old could do. So you get your first gold star, as it were, for doing stuff that any 2-year-old could do very easily. And you know what? A lot of people struggle on that one. They try to draw perfect circles. And then we have to break that. We have to break that to the point where you go, I want you to take a crayon with your thumb, with your, like your fist or whatever, and how you draw it on the wall. And so you have to break those patterns. And then very quickly, within a few weeks, they're drawing Snoopy. Within a few weeks, they're drawing complex stuff like stuff from Ice Age, and they go, wait a second, this is what animators do. How am I doing this in 5 weeks? So the confidence is what we're working on. We're now working on the skill, because they don't have the skill, they don't have the practice, they don't, and the main thing is they don't have that volume of cartoons in their head. They don't know how the finger goes, how the hand goes, how the legs go. And so then we get them to another level of practice, which is copying. Now, in almost every age, copying was the way to go about stuff. So Van Gogh, or Van Gogh, he copied all of Hokusai's work from Japan. All of the, Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, they're not sitting there and going, oh, what's in my brain? No, they have they have this model in front of them. They're copying. And in our age, we have confused copying with plagiarism, right? Taking credit for somebody else's work. But this is not taking credit. This is copying. As a kid, you trace. So anyway, to answer the question in a briefer manner, what you have to really work on when you're teaching people is you have to get their confidence up. Because when you get their confidence up, then they use less energy thinking, oh, am I doing the wrong thing? Am I doing am I a fool? Because they burn up all of this energy trying to be so smart. And you're giving them tasks that don't require so much energy, and that boosts the skill level because now they go, okay, I can do this.
Yeah, I mean, because you taught us how to draw the whale as part of the workshop, and when you said that, draw a whale, and I just draw any whale. Yeah, mine looked like a 6-year-old's whale, and then you broke it down and said draw a rectangle and do this, and the confidence, I guess, of all of us was, we thought it was excellent because you broke it down into those layered steps and made it really easy, and you're like, wow, all a whale is just a combination of all different strokes.
Yeah, and this is the problem that a lot of facilitators do. So the facilitator is also not in the safe zone. They're also feeling like they're being judged, right? So they're always in that unsafe zone themselves. And so they try to be smarter than the audience. And that kind of, it comes across. The audience figures it out, that you're smarter. You're standing there on this pedestal, as it were. So when you bring the audience, so often a client will tell you, oh, it's so easy for you to do that. So now if you go, okay, wait a second, how do we get rid of this objection? It's so easy for you to do that. And how do we get you to do it? Now you go, wow, if I can do this, what else can I do? All the time, you're working between this factor of how am I going to increase their confidence, how they're going to feel more safe, how they're going to, use less energy. Poof, we get skill. So skill is really what people think skill is. I'll just practice, but practice doesn't. It gets you there, but it takes very long.
Would you say it's like a transfer of confidence?
The first thing is it's a factor of energy. So if it takes you a long time or it's a complex thing to do, then you're going to use up a lot of energy. And if you lose up a lot of energy, you lose confidence, and then you never acquire the skill. Essentially, it's an equation, which is an equation is this plus this equals to this, right? So energy plus confidence is equal to skill. That's what it is. It's not I will practice and get skill. No, you will. If you have continuously difficult tasks like, okay, now go build a computer. Okay, now go destroy the building. It's like, this is really hard. But if you say, okay, go get me a glass of water, then you say, okay, go and make some noodles, as in, the 2-minute noodles. You can accomplish all of those things. And now, this is, again, you go back to a 10-year-old, and the 10-year-old goes, I was so smart. I brought water today. At home, I don't get to bring water, but in school I did water today. I was like, okay, fine. So now they're excited about that activity because it required so little energy. And then you can say, okay, now we're going to chop onions with a chef knife, right? And you go, how am I going to give a 9-year-old to chop onions with a chef knife? But with a chef's knife, this is all the task of energy. If the reason why people grow up and go, I can't cook, I can't draw, it's because the first time they're given a recipe, it's like, okay, here are 30 ingredients, go make a great Indian dish. Sure. It doesn't work like that. So the facilitation process is the same thing, which is if you give me tiny increments, I don't have to burn up so much energy to learn it. I don't have to burn up so much energy to wonder if I'm a fool or whatever. And I know that you're not trying to show off as a facilitator. So now, because I have that energy, I can put it to use and gain more confidence. And then as I gain more confidence, I get more skill. And in that whole formula, you have all these breaks. So you're confused. You speak with someone else. you speak to the presenter, you have space to get rid of all the objections and the problems and stuff, which otherwise is like, oh, I got stuck at 10:30, and now it's 12 o'clock, and now it's 2 o'clock. And the biggest problem is that clients will not stop you. They will say, I'm sure he'll cover this on day 2.
Yes.
And you never cover that on day 2 because you have no idea that they have that problem. And they're waiting for day 2, by which point they're completely confused. So there are all of this, and I'm not saying our system is perfect. In fact, we have to keep tweaking it for this very reason, which is that we want people to have that skill, and they still have all of these obstructions that they put in their way. And so we have to keep tweaking that. It's just how it is.
Yeah. So you're actually writing a book on talent, aren't you?
Yes.
I know you've been talking about it for a while, but I think you're getting momentum, which is really great.
Yeah, we have to pre-sell it. Yeah, that's the only way I'm
this
going to
is
write
a great podcast to talk about talent, then. This can, get you over the line, build up momentum even more. So do you believe that you can teach anyone anything, or do you think the person coming in to learn the skill has to have some degree of motivation to want to learn the skill, depending on the complexity of that skill?
I'll give you an example of my niece Marcia, and I'll give you an example of the other niece, Kira. So they're both one was 8 and the other was 13 when we started this exercise. Now, both of them were not motivated. As in Kira, point blank told me. So we said we're going to have these Friday sessions, and both of you can draw and paint, like with real watercolors and in real watercolor books and stuff. And Kara, point blank, at 8 has decided, I can't draw. And okay, I'll come to paint because I can just throw color on the paper, right? So I can't draw. And then we have Marcia, and Marcia is like, okay, I'll do whatever you want, but swimming, I rated it as a 10, and painting or drawing is 5. So there's really no motivation on the part of both of these kids. And what we decided was, look, it's not about the content, it's about the energy. And so we got them there, and we give them cola, and they have, they dance, and then they run around, and then they eat chips, and then they listen to music and stuff. In the last half an hour, that's when they're drawing and painting. And if you see their work, you will be astounded. So what's really driving their stuff is, first of all, this is so much fun. So they would put up with the pain of drawing because 70% of it is fun. So okay, I'll humor you, but what happens is in the process that we teach them in tiny increments. So it's like, let's draw a snowman today, or tomorrow let's draw something where we're starting to build it up, and then you only figure out what it is right at the end, right? So it's still all this fun. And their drawings are superb. So now Marcia looks at her painting and goes, wow, that's so good. And so she's a teenager, and, pretty much like a teenager looks in front of a mirror and goes, oh, that I look so great, or whatever. They spend time in front of the mirror. Marcia does that with her paintings. So and Kara's like, what are you looking at your paintings for so long? But Kara, if her parents say, oh, do you want to go for painting class? She's like, yeah. And what she did was, she said, I have these folders on my iPad, and I let her draw on the iPad as well. And she said, where's my work? Because she did like 3 or 4 drawings. And I said, it's in this folder. And she says, that folder is called I Can't Draw. And I said, yeah, because you said you couldn't draw, so I put them in the I Can't Draw folder. And she said, but that was 2 months ago. So this is the level, this is how you start to get into this factor of talent, which is you have to understand what causes people to be motivated in the first place. And it's not your stupid bullet points. It's not your content. It's not all of that stuff. They are motivated by fun. If you want to teach spelling, get the kids out on the playground and you say, how do we spell appetizer? Your A, your P, your P, your E. and then move them around. And then you say, okay, now can we break up appetizer? You're the letter T, right? So you go and find other kids and you make a letter. So you make a letter like taser, Taser, or sitter, And now the kids are running around, they're learning spellings, but they're having fun. If you say, tomorrow, who wants to learn spellings? Well, everyone is like, yay, spelling time. It's like, what is wrong with this school?
That sounds really fun.
I know, but that's the whole point. The point is that if I'm having fun, I'm not burning up energy.
Yeah.
If I'm not burning up energy, I'm getting confident. And I know that I'm learning. It's not like I'm saying, oh, I'm just having fun. I'm not learning anything. So it's fun designed in a way that gets people to understand or to learn. So it is that builds the confidence all the time. And then that leads to skill. Well, that's how we do it.
Yeah, so that's how you do it, and that's something that you've refined, say, over the last 15 to 20 years. So it didn't start out this way. I'd love to hear about a time was there a time that you can reflect on where things didn't go so well in a workshop, or some of your participants were still scratching their heads afterwards, like going back quite a few years, I'd imagine. And then when you started to think, hey, I actually really need to start thinking about how I deliver this now. Or have you always been this good as a teacher?
No one's. I mean, one of the things that we do is we always ask for feedback, like not praise. We interview everyone for testimonials, that's for sure, but we also ask for specific feedback. So when I left Singapore after your workshop, I had like 25 points, 25 things that I had to fix from that workshop to the next workshop.
Really?
And then
25?
Yes, I can send you the list.
Okay.
And then you thought, oh, that was a pretty good workshop, but there were 25. And then the Brussels workshop, there were 25. And then when we do the same workshop, so we've been doing the article writing course, for instance, online since 2006. And so at the end of the course, people are expected to write 1,000 words on what was wrong with the course. So now, let's say 250 people have written what was wrong with the course. We have 250,000 words of feedback. This is how you fix things. It's not helpful. You need a stiff drink at the end of the day because they all sound very ungrateful.
Yes, I was going to say you need to get yourself into a safe space before you read. And wow,
yes, yeah, because
words.
But the good thing is what we do is we have that mix. So we have, okay, you give us your feedback, what you can, and it's not just feedback. It's like, what do you suggest? How do we go about it? And I have this conversation with them. How do we fix it? What do we do? But what if I have this problem? And then the clients come up with the solution. And the next stage is the testimonials, where they talk about how much. So the client looks at feedback as, look, I really am giving you feedback, not because I hate you, but because I love your stuff and I want to see. So they're trying to fix something that they see is broken. But you see it as, oh, goodness, I gave everything and they want all of this more. I mean, that is a definite problem. You have to get yourself into loving feedback. And if you can't do that, then do the feedback first. And the very next thing you do is the testimonials, because the energy that comes from the testimonial will kind of reduce the impact of, or the brutality of that feedback. The problems that we've had in the past have really stemmed from me getting exhausted. So when I used to do any workshops or presentations before, I had to literally rest for a week. And I thought, why am I having to rest for a week? I already know this stuff. I'm so exhausted. These guys must be really exhausted. And so I started to think about this whole topic about what people want. And it's to do with marketing rather than, because people, they say one thing and then they mean something else, but it's not like they know what they mean. So a good example of this is Weight Watchers. And if you say, what is Weight Watchers' slogan? Well, when they started out, it was eat all the food you want. And you think, that doesn't make any sense. But
No.
Yes, it does. It makes perfect sense. The people that get in trouble and go to Weight Watchers are people who eat all the food they want.
Yes.
The people who don't have that problem don't have to go to Weight Watchers. So what Weight Watchers is effectively saying is, you can eat all the food you want. We'll show you how to eat it. right?
Yeah.
So that's the one factor. That is, I can't express that. I can't express that I want to eat everything in sight. I can't express that. I don't want to admit that. But when I see the slogan, I don't even see the slogan. I just go, oh yeah, that's the right place. So we had to look at our workshops and go, what do people really want? And the answer is they want to have fun. Whether you look at a corporate event or you look at a small business event or any event, everybody who comes there says, I want to have fun. So then, you speak to your partner, you speak to your accountant, and they say, you're going to a 3-day workshop, you're going to spend all this money. What are you going to do? And you go, I'm going to have fun. No, that's not going to work. It's not going to work for you. It's not going to work for them. They go, well, fun. You can have fun here. Why are you spending all this money? So I can't admit that to myself. But that doesn't mean as a facilitator that you can't teach while letting them have a blast. Yeah.
That's what I'm finding. I find the most effective facilitators are the ones that bring in the most fun. And then learning is kind of like the side effect of having a great time.
Yes. And the worst facilitators always say it at the start. They say, okay, are you guys ready to have fun?
Oh.
And then you sit through 3 days of complete agony.
It's like, my husband says if he meets anyone that ever says that introduces themselves as easygoing, that you've got to watch out.
Yeah, it's overcompensation.
It is overcompensation.
Yeah.
So what is some advice that you could give to people that are starting their journey in facilitating and leading workshops in their own context? What would you tell them, Sean?
Well, I think the main thing is that they have to get very comfortable with themselves. And that's quite a journey. It's got nothing to do with the audience. It's got everything to do with how much authority you have in that space. And so if you look at, say, Photoshop, well, no one has authority in everything in Photoshop, but maybe in masking, and then maybe in the subset of masking. So what you want to do is you want to be comfortable. You feel like you're in a safe space, and any questions that come within that space, you can talk about it. And so then the second thing that you want to do is you want to take that little subset or subset and then expand that so that it is, say you could cover that material in, I don't know, half a day. Well, you don't have to go for 3 days. You have to be really confident to take a half-day material for 3 days. But let's say you said, okay, we'll do this in 1 day or 1.5 days. Well, now what you have to do is you have to go, okay, I have to explain in 1/3 of the space. I have to get them to work in 1/3 of the space. And then I have to get them to build exercises or do something like that in 1/3 of the space. And then the clients go, yeah, so I learned it, I practiced it, I made mistakes, and I fixed it. And now you have 1.5 days. When you get more proficient at it, well, now you can go, okay, we've got 3 days. I've got more examples for you. I've got, more activity for you. And I don't feel any fear that our tea break is going for 45 minutes.
That's kind of black belt status for facilitators, being that comfortable and confident to do that.
Right. Because you also have to know, when we went to Brussels, for instance, the stuff that you guys covered in the first day, they hadn't covered in the first day, but they were a much larger group. And it seems like, oh, damn, I haven't covered. I'm going to get into trouble. And you have to be, I think as a facilitator, you have to be comfortable in your own skin. So you have to be comfortable that you're going to goof up 50 to 60% of your early days before you start, getting to the comfort level. But breaking it up is always a good way, because once you're confident, then you don't have to overcompensate, and you don't have to be, I'm the boss here and you're just minions.
Yeah, that's right. And just respect me because I'm the one that's standing up in front of the room. It's actually the respect's coming from what you're giving them in terms of the skill and your authority on what you know.
If the best way to do that is to get them to tell you what you've already told them. And if they can't do that, well, now you've given them slides.
Yeah, that's an excellent point to finish on. Sean, thank you so much for your time. And I know that you're known as the online marketing kind of guru. And we've spoken about a topic, though, that I think you're going to grow through in terms of bringing out your book, and you're going to be another expert on talent as well. So you've got two hats. Where can people find you if they want to sort of follow up and see what else that you do?
Well, we're at Psychotactics, so that's, I don't know if you can spell it, but Google can, so look up Psychotactics. And that's psychotactics.com. That's where we are.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Sean. It's been great having you on the show.
You're welcome.
Thanks so much for tuning in to First Time Facilitator. If you like the episode, please share it with your mates or subscribe to the podcast feed in iTunes. Till next time,